Hello, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the shortest talk at BSides San Francisco. It's good to be here today. I'm going to be talking about community cyber defense, how everyday people are stepping up to help their communities, and how you can get involved. But first, a little bit about myself. My name is Sarah Powazek. I direct the Public Interest Cybersecurity Program at the UC Berkeley Center for Long-Term Cybersecurity, which is a very long-winded way of saying that I spend my time investigating and promoting different ways to help organizations that are under-resourced with cybersecurity and help them bolster their defenses. There's a few different components of public interest cybersecurity, but I'll keep it brief. One is that it's focused on community cybersecurity. So we hear the term national security thrown around a lot, but really there are lots of instances where something might not qualify as a national security risk, but really has a profound impact on local folks. So for example, like a food bank being hit with ransomware. Maybe not a national security risk, but really profoundly felt by folks who get their meals from that food bank quite immediately. So that's what my program is focused on. And we also look at a population level instead of an asset level. So we're not thinking about what we're trying to defend. We're thinking about what people we're trying to defend, who are the most vulnerable in our communities, and what services do those folks rely on that if they were taken away, those folks would struggle the most. So that's where we're trying to concentrate our resources. So why is this work important? You folks all already know this, but I'll say it again. The most at-risk organizations in the country right now are some of the least prepared to deal with cybersecurity threats. I'm talking about cities, for example, right? Even the city of Oakland, where many of us live and work, just last month was hit with ransomware. It's becoming really a weekly occurrence. And there are really real impacts for these sorts of organizations getting hit. Cities provide marriage licenses, they provide 911 and other emergency services, housing and eviction services, nonprofits, I mentioned food banks, institutions of faith, folks providing free legal services and refugee assistance, and public infrastructure. So not just the large ICS institutions, but also small ISPs, small water providers. All of these folks are very, very low resource. Some of them might not even have a single cybersecurity staff. Many of them don't even have a single IT person at their institution. So they're really, really struggling and they need more assistance than we're able to provide. And before I jump into why you should volunteer, I'll say that there are a lot of folks at the federal level doing absolutely incredible work to try and make this problem better. We're prosecuting ransomware actors. They're making more funding available for local institutions. Lots of really great work. But the reality is that almost every organization is affected by cybersecurity, and it's just not going to be enough unless all of us get involved and try and help exactly where we live and work. And if that hasn't convinced you already, here's a bunch of good reasons why you should consider volunteering. You get to see the direct impact of your work. You get to hang out with, in my opinion, the coolest people in cybersecurity, the ones who are trying to do it for free in their spare time, what little may be. And you might make a real difference. So you might be the difference between a small business shutting down and being able to stay afloat because you helped them bolster their cyber defenses. So in my remaining time, I'm trying to get through 3 major groups of volunteering organizations, what sorts of programs they've started up and how you can get involved, academia, local government, and private sector, individual volunteers who are working out of nonprofits. So we'll start with academia. You may not know this, but academia actually has a really rich history of training students to do public service. So you see this in medical school clinics where med students work in clinics to give out free healthcare. You see it with law students who are spending time in a pro bono clinic to give out free legal services. And so in 2018, a number of academic institutions wondered, why aren't we doing this for cybersecurity? We have all these students who need real world experience. They don't know how to break into the industry. And we have all these organizations like right next door that need our help. And so they thought, what if we created a cybersecurity clinic? We'll take these students, not just computer science students, but law students, people from political science, folks in human rights. We'll bring them all in and we'll teach them to do a basic cyber risk assessment, provide some basic recommendations to these organizations, and we'll do it all for free. We'll give them course credit or internship, paid internship experience. And they did it. So UC Berkeley and MIT led the charge, but we're now up to 9 institutions across the country that are providing these free services. I help organize the consortium. And we've trained over 730 students to perform these assessments to get better jobs in the field. We've served over 120 community organizations for free. So this includes now, I mentioned MIT and UC Berkeley, a number of institutions from the University of Texas, University of Alabama, University of Georgia, Indiana University, and Columbia. Local government. So now we're talking about local government creating programs to help organizations within their state borders. They are creating incident response corps programs. You might have heard of MIC3 before, the Michigan Cyber Corps program. But there are also more proactive programs where they're providing risk assessments and threat intelligence and other sorts of resources. And this doesn't sound very volunteer-y until I tell you that many of these programs are actually training, recruiting, and certifying folks from the private industry to act as sort of a cyber reserve corps and are called in to help respond to major cyber incidents within the state. So MIC3 is one. Ohio and Wisconsin have also started up these programs where they're able to leverage folks in the private sector, again, in their spare time to help respond particularly to those sorts of incidents where they wouldn't be able to contract a professional incident response firm, particularly cities and municipalities. So only a few states have started up these programs, as you can see from this map from the National Governors Association, but it has caught on in recent years. And there's a lot of different services that these folks provide. Sometimes they operate year round. So that if there aren't incidents, they're trying to do proactive outreach and other things. Really, really interesting program and really catching on very quickly. And finally, trying to leave some room for questions, there are nonprofit programs. So these might be familiar to already. I'll go over a few of them. These are mainly folks from the community starting up programs and trying to fill these gaps in service when they're seeing these organizations that just don't have the resources that they need. So the CTI League is a big one. It was founded by a group of hackers in 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic when they saw that healthcare infrastructure and hospitals in particular were really vulnerable to cyber threats because of how overwhelmed they were with the pandemic. And so they did things like, in 2020, CISA released some threat indicators. They took those indicators. They actually identified some C2 infrastructure. They helped with lawful takedowns, and they were able to track and try and proactively notify victims of those attacks. I'm the Cavalry is also an incredible program. They've been around for a decade now. They started up in 2013, also by a group of hackers. They have a really broad scope of work on policy and on hacking and identifying vulnerabilities, particularly in the automotive industry and in like healthcare and healthcare tools. And they also run an incredible program called Hackers on the Hill, where they bring in folks like you to give technical input into public policy right in Congress. And I'll round it out with the Cyber Peace Builders. This is an initiative from the Cyber Peace Institute. They're a nonprofit based in Switzerland. The city is escaping me. They're great. So this program, they match volunteers with discrete tasks. So say I'm an organization that needs help configuring my firewall rules. They will pair 1 or 2 volunteers with that organization. They complete that task, then they're done. It's a really ingenious idea of helping move the needle a little bit for a lot of organizations. While understanding that a lot of folks in private industry really only have like an extra hour or 2 a week, if that, maybe a month. So they're training hundreds of folks. I think they have 300 volunteers and over 700 hours that folks have put into this. Oh no, I've been on the wrong slide, you guys. Okay, here is this slide. I'll leave it up very briefly so that you can see these programs that I've been talking about with no slide behind me. Okay. In conclusion, so I hope if you take something away from this presentation, it's that people really need you and you can make a difference with knowledge and skills that you already have. There are lots of programs that I mentioned today that would love your help. You should check out if your state has one of those volunteer cyber corps programs, if there's a cyber clinic in your state that you could offer services to, if one of those nonprofit programs you'd be interested in joining, or start something yourself. We're really not at the point where we can go to bed and not worry about something really critical falling victim to ransomware. And in the meantime, we're all going to need to play a role in helping, in particular, the low resource folks who really don't have the money or the knowledge to protect themselves in advance. And I'll end with a quote from the Wisconsin CIO talking about one of the cyber core programs. When these people show up on site during an incident, they stop the bleeding and they fix problems. So I hope you'll all join me in stopping the bleeding and fixing problems until one day, hopefully, we don't have any more problems to fix anymore. Thank you. think I have a couple minutes for questions if folks have any. Like a volunteer organization? Unfortunately, no. The NGA site is a good place to start if you want to learn more about the cyber core programs. For those nonprofits, you'll have to look up their websites individually and they have more information. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Any suggestions for topics for state government to start the cyber core program?
I would say that the folks that you want to talk to really differ depending on the state. Each of them tries to house their cyber activities in a different department. I'd say the Office of Emergency Management or the National Guard are generally where those programs are hosted. And if you look at the NGA study that I referenced, they have a section on authorities. Sometimes they've actually needed to pass legislation to give them the authority to pull in private folks to respond to these. So I'd say if you could get in touch with someone in the Office of Emergency Management and see where that cyber activity is concentrated, those are the folks you'll want to talk to about those programs. Mm-hmm. Any other questions? All right, happy to chat more after this talk. And I'll say if you like the idea of community cyber defense, UC Berkeley is hosting a conference this June 14th in DC called the Cyber Civil Defense Summit. We'll be having panels with the folks who are running these programs to talk about them, how they can collaborate and scale. And so I hope to see you there. Thanks so much.